Hi guys. My name is Dennis Homer. I'm the tech evangelist for Kyber Network, and today I'm going to talk to you a bit about the growth of the DeFi space as seen by Kyber Network. Now, we're at a great position to see the growth in this space just because we're integrated into so many different dApps. We're integrated into different wallets, into different e-commerce sites, into games, and of course into DeFi dApps. And because all this is happening on-chain, we have great visibility to what's growing and what's not growing as much. So whenever there's an increase in volumes on-chain, new addresses, new users, we have a very nice top-down view of what's happening. And just to give you a very brief overview of why exactly Kyber is integrating into all these different dApps, we basically provide liquidity for these dApps for their own kind of unique use cases. So at a very high level, a very simple thing might be you've built a dApp that accepts its own native token or accepts ETH or DAI. And with Kyber integration, your end user can just send anything in their hot wallet, and Kyber will convert it to the dApp, to the ERC20 or to ETH or whatever is required by the smart contract to run. And all this happens within one transaction. So a DeFi example might be you have like a portfolio management app, and every now and then you have to rebalance your portfolios to certain ratios, and as they go out of balance, automatically Kyber can rebalance that for you. Or a more complicated DeFi integration might be you want to build a leveraged long ETH 3x position, for example, and instead of having to lock up ETH, buy DAI with that ETH, take that DAI, buy more ETH, lock that up again, and vice versa to create this leveraged position, you can just integrate Kyber, and within one transaction, you can get all of that going. And because we had all this kind of top-down view, back in February, we decided to report all these numbers in an ecosystem blog. We would really dive into the numbers and provide growth volumes and geographical information, and just give tidbits about what's growing and what's not growing. The first month I published this report, what stood out to us was the number of wallets that were using Kyber. This is like the top 10 integrations by volume. And you have Kyber Swap, which is basically built on Kyber Network for swapping. But everything else, if you see IM Token, Engine, Trust Wallet, Mu, they were the companies that were using Kyber the most to be able to swap one token to another. And this is, I think, back in February. And the only DeFi dApp back then was Nuo Network in 9th place. We're around 2,099 Ether, which is around $200,000 worth of volume. So DeFi wasn't on our radar that much back then. Within our second ecosystem update, I started introducing even more new DeFi integrations that were coming on board. We had CDP Saver, that's now rebranded to DeFi Saver. We had Fulcrum. We were integrating many new dApps over that first Q1, Q2 period. And back then I was also reporting that Nuo had greatly increased its volumes, had doubled and tripled its volumes. By the third ecosystem update, we recognized that there was a bit of a shift. I mean, it wasn't wallets dominating anymore. We could see that Nuo Network had increased by 185%. CDP Saver, within its first month of integration, had brought in over $2 million worth of trading. And even InstaDApp had increased its volumes by 500%. I think it was around June that we really saw this space pick up. We really knew that there was momentum, because March to April would go on 3x, April to May another 5x, May to June another doubling of volumes just through DeFi dApps. And we were having a flood of DeFi dApps coming into the space. And I remember back at the time saying, not only are we seeing volumes from existing DeFi dApps grow, we're also seeing many new entrants enter the space and immediately carve out market share for themselves. It wasn't a zero-sum game. The whole space was really expanding really fast, and even new dApps that were coming in were immediately finding demand for their dApps. There was a lot of volume over there. And this was also contributing to Kyber Network's overall growth as well. I mean, a big part of this growth that we've seen in order of magnitude since January is actually coming from DeFi dApps and from Kyber Swap itself. And it's around this time that after maybe 20, 30 different DeFi integrations, we started seeing a little more niche little pockets of DeFi kind of popping up out of nowhere as well. And one example of that was, for example, DEX aggregators. So within a few months, we had an explosion of DEX aggregators just pop up onto the scene. And what these do is, for example, instead of having to go to each DEX to get a best price and then go back and execute on that best price, a DEX aggregator will basically collect all the DEXs into one user interface, so you can basically see which one has the best trade and just execute on top of that. And then some of these even started splitting orders across multiple DEXs to minimize the slippage. So 1inch Exchange that came out of East New York back in May recently placed a single trade worth $170,000 by splitting it across multiple exchanges. Another trend we were seeing was an increase in leverage trading, and this started maybe back in February, March, and they all started pretty conservatively with 2x, they went to 3x, 4, 5, and even Opine now is providing 6x leverage trading. And we're seeing all these trends just pop up in the DeFi space. So as we were being integrated into different dApps, we started seeing that those dApps would then go and integrate with other different dApps, and we started having this chain of value across multiple hops. And one example of that is Diversify. So Diversify is a decentralized exchange that provides margin trading. And they've integrated Fulcrum to be able to provide those services. In turn, Fulcrum is integrated into Kyber so that they can access that liquidity. In turn, Kyber is integrated into Oasis, Uniswap, and other liquidity providers to pull in that liquidity that's required for these dApps. And then finally, you have end users that can go and lock up money in Uniswap to provide that liquidity. So what you end up with is this 5-hop kind of value exchange across the DeFi space. And we didn't see any of this coming up 5, 6, 7 months ago, but now we're seeing these very interesting kind of exchanges of value happening through multiple hops. I mean, a Diversify end user has no idea what's happening in the back end, but it's really cool to see all of this happen on chain, and it's atomic. So it either all happens or none of it happens at all. There's no risk of it getting stuck somewhere in the middle. What we also started seeing was that the assets that were being traded were becoming much more granular as well. So we keep talking about composability, and we have this term like Lego money, and that's what we started seeing within the DeFi space as well. And a very good example of this is DAI. So you can lock up your ETH, and you can issue DAI in return, or you can buy DAI on the open market. With that DAI, you can lend it on platforms like Compound. On Compound, you get C DAI in return, which is the DAI that's actually accruing interest. And someone took that concept and they created R DAI. So with R DAI, you can split the principal, so the amount you loaned, from the interest. And that interest, you can give it to any third party. You could give it to UNICEF, you could give it to any other party you want. And R DAI is floating interest rate. So some teams in ETH Berlin took that concept and created LS DAI, where it's now you have a fixed interest rate, so you know exactly how much you're going to get. And I was in Boston a few days ago for ETH Boston, and there we saw even more teams kind of using that composability concept and building like GDAI, where the principal is left alone, but the interest is used as gas payments for other dApps. So it's really cool how you can really break it down and build exactly what you need to build. So, I mean, at Kyber, for us, it's been very interesting seeing the growth of the space over the 6 to 9 months. It's been an incredible explosion. And we've really seen a growth of this financial stack, but it's more at a micro scale. So we've seen, derivatives, exchanges, lending, borrowing. Most of these didn't exist in a usable form maybe 9, 12 months ago. Like during the ICO boom, we were talking about all these dApps that none of them have code, but we finally have something that we can use. And we see this more as a parallel to the conventional financial system right now, because we don't have a horde of people from Wall Street coming in and using these dApps right now. Right now, the people using these are still very crypto-native people. They're very comfortable with their private keys. They're very comfortable with signing transactions on MetaMask, and they're actually they know what they're doing. And we also see it as parallel in the sense of, if you guys remember in Men in Black, where Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones opened that locker, and there's a little microcosm in there. That's what it feels like when we open DeFi space right now, and there's a little micro financial world in there with its own derivatives, its own lending, its own borrowing. It's all there, and that's being built up, right now. So for us, it's been very exciting to see this growth because we can see the potential. I mean, the derivatives market in the conventional world is worth 500 trillion. Even if we were to capture 1% of that in the next 5 years, we're still talking about a valuation that is worth $5 trillion. So there is a lot of growth space out there. We're still going to be building these products. So at Kyber, we're very excited to be on this journey. And every time we go around the world and we see people, we can see how passionate they are, how smart they are. They're bringing their skill sets from the conventional world. And, we're happy to be working with all these companies. Thank you.